My name is Tom Dennison, and I'm going to give you a little bit of background on Startup Grind and why we are all here tonight. So Startup Grind was founded about 6.5 years ago in Palo Alto, and it started out with just a handful of founders getting together and really sharing their stories with each other, and founded by a guy named Derek Anderson. And started out with about a dozen folks, and that grew to 2 dozen, 3 dozen, 4 dozen. And then Derek decided, you know what, why don't we bring in a more prominent local founder to share their story? And that became wildly successful. So again, that was about 6 years ago. As of today, Startup Grind is in over 200 cities around the world. Pretty cool, huh? That's good. You guys are quiet. So what are we all about? It's really about 3 things. It's really about inspiration, education, and connection. And with inspiration and education, that's why we've got phenomenal guest speakers, and we've got a great one here tonight that I'll introduce shortly. But the last, connection, is really up to you guys. So what I'd like to do is just kind of challenge everybody here tonight to truly connect with somebody else. And I don't mean just exchange business cards. I don't mean networking. I mean truly connect. And by that I mean do something outside of these 4 walls with somebody you meet here tonight. If you do that with one person, I promise you only good things will come. All right? So before we get started, a couple notes about sponsors and such. I want to thank, first of all, our phenomenal videographers in the back, and Flow Motion. They do all of our videos. They're phenomenal. If you need a videographer, right here, the 2 gentlemen in back, please connect with them. We also have a sponsor in Intuit and a sponsor in Fiverr. Anybody familiar with Fiverr? You guys know what it is? Awesome service. Even our guest has used Fiverr in the past. Incredible service. Get cool stuff, logos, what have you, for starting as cheap as $5. So in any case, so now one other thing is that when I invite our guest up on stage here, if you will, what I'd like everybody to do is stand up and cheer as loud as you possibly can. All right? So set your beers down, set your chips down, set your potbelly down. And are you guys ready for this? Are you seriously ready? Like, I want to hear it big time. All right? All right, let's give it up for Mark Lawrence! Thank you. So again, first time doing this without microphones, so if you have trouble hearing, let me know, especially the guys in back, all right? So welcome. Thanks for joining us. So one of the ways I like to start out, and by the way, tonight is all about you, so is tell us about where you grew up, the kinds of things you were thinking and doing as a kid, and if there's any sort of story that you'd like to share, please feel free, and we'll just go from there.
Awesome. Well, I like being a kid. I think I still do a lot of stuff that kids do. But where I grew up was in Dearborn Park, and my favorite thing was the big yellow slide. I don't know if it's still there, but it was right basically in the South Loop, not too far from here. So born and raised in Chicago, then moved out to the burbs. And I'd say, I guess, something from childhood. My first, I don't want to call it a company, but it was because it was a business. But I learned in the encyclopedia, how to make perfume, and so I made perfume and cologne when I was about 8 years old. And I sold that for lunch money.
You're kidding. That's extraordinary.
Yeah, it's fun.
I've got to believe you're the first perfumery that's ever been up on stage with me. That's phenomenal.
I had great parents. They supported me a lot because I got called in the principal's office for running an illegal business at school. and my mom, she's like, I drove up from 51st in Harlem she's like, this is ridiculous, and she literally walked out on the principal. So it was great because like whenever there was like an issue, I'd be like, call my mom. So they didn't really call her after that.
That's awesome. So fast forward a little bit. So where did you go to school? And when did you start thinking about beyond creating and selling perfumes?
The yellow slide.
Yeah. When did you start thinking about maybe doing something beyond?
Well, I graduated from Bradley in 2008, and I worked in residential mortgage-backed securities during the financial crisis, first job out of college. So it wasn't like I had this grand vision to start a company. I had this grand vision to not do that. And so I had no idea what I wanted to do, but I left. When I left, Bank of America, and I just knew I didn't want to do that.
Was there a moment in time, like we'll get to SpotHero and such, but the actual problem that you were trying to solve, was it an experience that you had, or how did you come to start thinking about that particular problem? And by the way, tell us what that problem is.
So I got a lot of parking tickets, and so I'd say that was the first problem. It was just me and my over-liberal interpretation of the parking laws, and so I thought there had to be a easier way to find parking, and so the problem was just my own personal problem of being frustrated with parking. I love to drive, hate to park, and figured there had to be a better way.
So let's think about like very, very early on. You have a co-founder.
Two.
Correct? Two co-founders. Tell us about how you guys met and that early days of actually getting to the point of building a product. And the term MVP is kind of thrown around quite a bit, but talk about those very, very early days and how you guys met.
So earliest, it goes back to Bank of America. One of my childhood friends, Brandon James, we had worked. Actually, I knew him since I was 8, but we had the same job at the same bank.
Wow.
Doing the same things, and we were roommates. And he decided he wasn't going to wait like I did, and he was just going to bike across the world. So he actually ended up biking from Berlin to India on a bicycle. He was gone 5 years. So like the mortgage crisis, there were some silver linings, right? Because we still could have been there. But he definitely was like, I'm out, and so we needed a roommate. And so met Jeremy Smith because he was the one that Brandon chose. I knew nothing about him, and it was funny because Jeremy lived, up in Skokie, worked at Motorola in Libertyville, and so he was like, guys, I'm not moving. Like I have a free place to live. Like he was at his parents' place. He's like, I already have like an hour and a half commute, and you want me to move to Bucktown? And he's like, why would I do that? And so I was being a little goofy. We were at the Gallery Cabaret, and I said, because it's going to change your life. And he was like, whoa, okay. I didn't actually think it might have devolved into what it did, but the thing is he actually did move in, and that's kind of how we met. So he became roommates with me because Brandon left to go bike across the world, and it was there that we started kind of like incubating different ideas about, well, how do we, what are alternatives to what we're doing right now? He was in corporate finance at Motorola, and I was in RMBS at Bank of America.
Did it start with trying to solve this problem around parking and such, or did you guys contemplate other solutions before that?
We talked about a number of different things, but we would get street clean tickets regularly. We would drive downtown, and there'd be problems there too.
Yeah.
So just kind of like both of us living together, moving in and around the city, or not moving, right? Like if you would go on vacation or work trip and you come back and you just get tickets.
Right.
Like parking more than 6 inches away from the curb, ticket.
It's insanity.
Yep.
So early on, when you put that stake in the ground and said, all right, we're going to do this. Tell us about that experience. Tell us about kind of the first things you guys did.
Well, Jeremy was the one that actually started first. He kind of was like, I want to do this as a side project. And so he kind of started it. I was helping him with it from the start, but I really didn't have an intention of doing it full time. I wanted to help him. I wanted to meet up Brandon on his bike trip. That was like way more appealing to me at the time. So, I was actually spending like, 80% of my energies on planning for the bike trip and 20% on SpotHero.
Yeah.
And then I decided, I was like, you know what? Let's do this full time. I remember I sat Jeremy down and I said, let's like actually do this full time together, but like we'll both do it. And he's like, what about your bike trip? I'm like, I don't know, what about it? So.
Are you still thinking about that bike trip?
Oh, it'll definitely happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, some way, some form, somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good for you. So I don't know why that light just came on, by the way. It's very bizarre, a little disconcerting. But anyway, oh, there we go. No, now it's flickering. Awesome. Anyway, so how did you guys get started? Like, what were the first things you guys did? I mean, where did Jeremy start? Like, what did he build something? Did he get other folks to build it for you? Or tell us about the very early days.
So I'd say the earliest days, like when you say like, did you get someone to build something? It suggests that we knew what we wanted to build.
Yeah.
And I think like we spent a lot of time working together to figure out what do we actually need.
Yeah.
So we would mock it up. The first thing we actually bought was balsamic mock-ups.
The
Program, and it was like $75. And I remember we were like agonizing over if we should like buy the license. $75. And like Tim, I don't know if he's still here, but I got SpotHero socks, and he was like, "Oh, those are they have a weave. Do you know how much those cost?" I'm like, "I don't even know." And he's like, "You probably don't want to know." So I'm not saying the socks were definitely less than $75, but we wouldn't agonize as much over that.
Yeah.
It's just crazy to think.
So really, then it started with. Will you tell me? I mean, is it more about customer discovery before you built anything?
Well, we were the customers. We wanted to build it for ourselves. So we talked to. We started going door to door, talking at the time, because it's a two-sided marketplace.
Yeah.
We wanted to get our customers were those with driveways, churches, schools, alleyways, and so we went door to door asking the owners of different properties if they would list. It started as a peer-to-peer. It wasn't a year later that we worked with large parking companies, parking garages and lots. So those were the customers that we talked to. Our MVV was actually posting stuff on Craigslist. Once we actually had like a spot, we would actually just sell it on Craigslist and facilitate it in person. So then we would talk to the users and say, well, what did you think? And they're like, well, I mean, it was convenient. It was kind of annoying to have to like go on Craigslist, call you, pay you cash, and so we're like, well, if people are willing to do that, then maybe we can build this platform where you didn't have to go through those 27 steps.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, if they're willing to pay for something and there's these massive hurdles for them to get over, you're onto something.
Right.
So was it at that point, and I guess once you've discovered that people are willing to pay for this, that you then started building?
Yeah, I think because we had two business founders. Our third technical founder didn't come on until about 6 months later, and so what we started to just like network within the Chicago technology community. So we went to Chippy, which is a Chicago Python organization. Went to different meetups, just to like meet folks, because we didn't really understand the kind of like how the world worked. I asked my uncle for help, and we actually ended up hiring as a contractor one of my uncle's friends because he was in the internet security space. So I remember he told me, you should use Python, and I said, what's Python? And now I mean we're on Django, and 6 years later, but it was nice because we structured a deal where his hourly rate was, because he was based in Cleveland, so it was cheaper. I believe it was like $50 an hour. And he was like, well, I'll give you a discounted rate of $40 an hour, or, which I don't think you can do nowadays. Like the demand has just gone up exponentially, but I'm sure like the ratios are similar if you can find the right place. But he said if you give me $20 an hour cash, but $50 an hour in like a deferred debt that's payable 10% of your revenues to pay us back, that's what we did. So it ended up being almost double the cost, but because we deferred a large chunk of the expenses, he took on the risk of not getting paid ever.
Yeah.
He would always make jokes about that.
Yeah.
And then
that's awesome.
He got paid sooner than he thought. We actually found out he built a back door because after he left, we sent him a check, our technical co-founder.
Like it would blow up or something if you didn't like pay him?
No. To track. Like,
Oh yeah.
And the reason he called me was like, hey, I know this is an awkward question, but I said, what? He said, well, you cut me a check, for this amount, and my sources tell me that it should be less. It's like, is there like another revenue stream that you guys have you're not telling me about? And we're like, what do you mean your sources? And he told us. And my technical co-founder shut that shit off real quick. But it was because we had other part of the software that like he couldn't backdoor into. So like I don't know how the database was. He didn't have like full access to the database, so he thought our sales were less.
Oh my God, that's funny.
So
That's extraordinary. So, so at that point, I mean, beyond him, you've got the three, you,
yeah,
and
myself, Jeremy, Larry.
Jeremy and Larry.
Yeah, so we're the three
And
co-founders.
were there any others on your team at that point?
Mm-mm.
So amongst the three, what were you doing in all of that? Were you out getting, well, tell us.
I mean, I think it depends on certain points, because it was the three of us for like 2 years.
Yeah.
So we did different things every day. I mean, like I would say I focused on like content marketing and I mean it was just like everything. Like when there's only three people. I mean, Larry did the tech stuff, right? That was like I guess like the easiest. And then Jeremy and I kind of split up, and basically we both did everything.
So two-sided marketplace. It's the old chicken or egg kind of argument, and so you're going out and getting. Is this at this point you were beyond the individual parking spots?
We
and
were
going
still.
for.
I mean, we still had. I mean, we still do today have a bunch of those. But the way that it worked is, we had done content marketing, so we were pumping out content that was like about parking, and we're parking tips, and so we started ranking SEO. We started having people sign up for a newsletter. So when we went live, we already had 500 people that were like highly relevant, that are drivers that like opted in. We would go to different networking events, let people know we're coming, so that when we launched, we had people that could use it. So we had, about 500 users or people.
Yeah.
And then when we got the spots, then people parked in them, and then it just kind of, you get more of each on both sides.
That's extraordinary. So how would you describe your role as far as, is it business development? Are you out like trying to capture new customers and then also trying to capture new places to park?
I mean, my role like constantly changes. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
I think, because it's like, I would get the parking spots, and then I would get the consumers to park in the parking spots, and I would answer the customer service call when there was like an issue, and then I would have to account manage. So it's like I was account management, sales, customer service, business development, marketing, CRM.
Yeah, everything.
Yeah.
What were some of your biggest challenges early on?
I don't know, just survive, right? Like we were 9 months away from, we were a week away from launch for 9 months, right? That's like really tough.
Yeah.
That's tough. And then, I was like, well, we did our projections. It's like first year, 10 million. First year, we didn't do 10 million. So that was kind of like the biggest challenges early on.
Were you fundraising at that point, or just purely bootstrapping, or?
We were bootstrapped. A lot of people ask about fundraising. I didn't even know fundraising like existed, or like what a VC was. I mean, 1871 didn't exist. We worked out of Tech Nexus.
Yeah.
Like there wasn't the Chicago community like exists today. If you would ask me like what's venture capital, I wouldn't have even known. We were in business for 2.5 years when we got our first $50,000 check from Pritzker. So,
yeah.
And at that time, I was like, we did it. Like,
that's
yeah,
it.
Yeah. He wrote a lot of $50,000 checks that year, but we thought we were like, we made it. Yeah.
So tell us about at what point that you felt like you needed to build out a bigger team, and that whole process. I think you'd mentioned that it was 2 years, just you three going through it. And JB writes you a check for $50K.
Well, it came along it came along with the program at the time. It was called Accelerate Labs, which is now Techstar Chicago. It was funny because in 2011, we applied. They told us no. And in 2012, we applied. They told us yes, and then we said no to them. And you know, part of it was like, I don't know, I just was like, you know, I didn't think we needed it.
Yeah.
At the time, I was like, we had gone from $378 in revenue, and we scaled it to 5,000 like in a month. So I was like, we did it, right? Like I really was like, this is like you know, because remember, $378, that was in November of 2011. That was like over a year after we started.
Wow.
So I mean, you know, we were pretty much at like, you know, 2 figures for a while, right? And then when you get to 3 figures, it's big.
Mhm.
We're at 4 figures, like, I mean, that was huge. And so ultimately they convinced us to, you know, do the program, and partly, you know, was actually thinking about team building.
Yeah.
So I remember Troy was like, well, why would you, Sam was like, Jaeger was like, you're out of your mind. And Troy was said, what is the, like, I don't understand, you know, why, like, you know, because we'd been in touch for the year before.
Mhm.
And I said, well, you know, you said there's a month of getting nothing done. Like, he's like, well, walk me through your day. And I'm like, closing garages, like,
Right.
working with the larger parking companies. I'm like, I'm getting customers, I'm talking to, you know, I'm like, look, I'm like, Troy, while I'm here, I missed 7 customer service calls. And like 7 customer service calls, Troy, and he's like, you know you can hire people. and I remember I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean, hire people? I'm like, I didn't know you could do that. And so, you know, he explained, he's like, well, you don't have to just run yourself into the ground. Like other people, you can hire someone, and you know, I was like, but we don't really have the money. He's like, well, you can get a $50,000 check, and then you get $18,000 here, and you know, salary's this much per month, and by 6 months goes by, you should have enough to cover this, and so it was kind of like super simple, but it was like a mind-blowing conversation. I was like, okay.
All right. Let's go hire.
Yeah, let's go hire. So we made our first one. You know, we hired a community manager then, and yeah, that was 111 hires ago.
Wow. And he or she, are they still around, or?
She was with us for 2 years, and then she
Yeah.
actually ended up working for a parking company, which is funny.
Really?
Yeah, so one of our partners. So it was kind of cool though, because the CEO of the company called me. He's like, "Hey, I want to ask you something." And like you wrote $1 billion company, and you're asking me this is. I thought it was a nice gesture. So she worked for us for 2 years. Then she worked at a parking parking management company, one of our partners, for 2 years, and then she went to another startup. So.
You'd mentioned early on about the whole, and this you might have been doing this before this whole concept of growth hacking came about, but it sounds like you were doing it through content creation. Is that something that you continued with her and moving forward?
Like content
Yeah,
marketing?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like we have someone full time that's all they do is content, and she has writers that work for her. So yeah, I mean, we've done that going forward. And Mandy, when she first started with us, like she did everything, like customer service, marketing. I mean, it was like all of the above, because then it was just 4 of us, right? But
Yeah.
you know, when we were going through the program, 80% of our time was like on the program, and only 20% like with the company. So it was a, you know, she had to fill in a lot of gaps.
And so beyond that, what were kind of the first areas that you guys built out beyond community manager? When you were able to hire more folks, was it customer service? Was it business development? A little bit of everything?
I mean, it was a little bit of everything, because
Yeah.
like we started going through the program, and you know, we got some marketing help, hired a bunch of interns, which is like its own separate. You know,
Well, tell us about it.
I mean, interns, it's like there's a wide variance. Like there's like some interns that are like really, really good, and then there's like some that are really bad. I've never had an intern in the middle. You either have the fire or you don't. So I don't really have any tips. Like for interns, like they just can, you know, really add value or really not. And if they're not adding value day 1, they probably won't add value day 2, 3, or
Yeah.
100.
Was out of that experience, though, I mean, that helped you hire?
Oh yeah, I mean, you know,
Yeah.
we made a lot of hard mistakes. So yeah, it definitely helped us hire. And you know, we built out different functions of the team. You know, and as you scale the team, like it was nice to be able to talk with different people who've already done it before, right? So, you know, now, like I understand the different breakpoints. Like we're experiencing kind of like a breakpoint in terms of like communication as we scale at about 100 people. And I felt the same. It was like when we went from like, you know, 5 of us, it felt, one way. And then when we got to 10, it was like different. Like, people didn't know what everybody was doing. It's like, what is he working on, right? Or why is she doing that? I was supposed to do it, right? And that stuff sort of breaks down. And then, then you're good. And then now you get to 25 and like the same stuff starts to happen. And then at least you've got like a breather at like 50, right? And then it starts to happen. And then we were pretty good up until about 111, and like then stuff started to all break again. And so at each point of the way, just talk to different people who've done it before.
Was that going back to Accelerate Labs or which is now Techstars? I mean, tell us about that experience, and if I would love to hear about the value, if any, that you got from mentors that were provided there.
It's crazy to see value, if any. Lots of value. I mean, I would like even today, like when I walk into the board meetings, there's 10 people in the room, and every single person in there was either like part of the program or met in the program, except for Insight Venture Partners, right? So, I mean, and that's just like the official board. Like then there's like other mentors, connections. It's like the gift that keeps on giving. I mean, we it's been 4 years since, and we're still, receiving the benefits of the program. Like,
that's extraordinary.
I can't believe we decided like we said no. It's almost funny.
That is.
Yeah.
So at that point, what are we talking about? How many years ago? Is this like 4 years ago?
Yeah, 4 years ago.
4 years ago. At what point did you start thinking about, wow, are we doing this in Chicago and we can do it beyond?
I mean, a lot of it was like external forces, because there was like folks in the program saying, well, like when are you going to scale to another city?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of pressure there. At the time there were like competitors that were in like a ton of other cities. Parkways had a 6-year head start on us. They were in 100 cities, and we were just
6-year head start? I guess I didn't realize that.
Yeah, they had a 6-year head start. So they were in 100 cities.
Wow.
And I remember like one of our parking partners was like, I like you guys, but you're a one-hit wonder, right? And like he started telling everyone as like a joke.
Yeah.
And they started telling me like, you're a one-hit wonder. And like it didn't stop. Like we were like, whoa, what up, one-hit wonder, Mark? And it was like a social pressure from the parking guys.
Wow.
And it was funny because I'm like, you're in Chicago, like you like us. We're providing new value in Chicago. Like if we did well in Boston, it would affect you zero. But they thought it was funny. And so I don't know why. I hopped on a plane and bought a ticket to go to DC, and it wasn't really thought through. And I'm just like, it'd be cool to expand there. And I'm like, it's the capital. Like there's probably like good stuff, right? Like, and so I flew there for the day, and it was funny because Jeremy was like, he was very good about like every penny that was spent. Remember the balsamic mock-ups?
Right.
Push for the $75. Didn't want to at first, and so he's like, "What's this plane ticket?" And I was like, I knew you would ask. Going to DC, he's like, "What for?" I'm like, "We're expanding there." And he's like, "On whose authority?" And I was like, "Mine." So it was about then that we decided I was the CEO.
Yeah.
Because it was, we were all co-founders then.
Yeah.
And it was funny because like it's so simple sometimes. Jeremy's like, well, Larry, like this is BS, and Larry's like, I think Mark should be CEO.
So that's 2 out of 3.
Yeah. And so Jerry's like, all right, well if that's how it's going to be, right? So he's like, but why are we spending this money on the plane ticket? I'm like, well, it's an investment. I was like, and I'm gonna see about like expanding the market. So now we've got like launch teams and a playbook, and like we're scaling to different cities. We've got 8 people in New York. We've got people on the ground in DC and Boston and San Francisco, and we've got a lot of things happening at different stages and process and structure and people to do that. But then it was really just like, let's figure this out. So
well, I'm curious, along the way as you go to different cities, are there different legal challenges that you run into, or any sort of different specific challenges to a DC or to a New York that are different from Chicago?
Yeah, I mean, like they're all different cities. They got different makeups of types of customers, type of structures. I mean, there's some overlap in terms of like the parking companies. Like a lot that have a presence in Chicago happen to have a presence in other places, which is nice. But Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of differences, but there's a ton that are the same, so we can execute a large portion kind of like in a system-sized fashion.
So what, I mean, thinking about ParkWiz getting the 6-year head start on you guys, and you're going into a market that they're already in.
Mm-hmm.
How do you approach that? Like how do you overcome that?
You know, I don't know if the right way to say is it something to overcome?
Mm-hmm.
Because like Pepsi, I guess, overcame Coke, right? I mean, like, imagine if Pepsi was like, well, you know, Coca-Cola's there.
Yeah.
Or we should, you know, make a soda. I don't know how that story happened, but we're like different companies. I looked at it like our biggest competitor is the parking meter, right? Or someone not parking with either of us.
Mm-hmm.
And so it wasn't something to overcome. In fact, they were helping to educate the market.
Mm-hmm.
They spent 6 years telling an industry which didn't even want to move from cash that they should use the internet, right? So, you know, they helped kind of pave a lot of the way for web, you know, because they moved towards the web, and then the phone was like a whole different ballgame. Like I remember being in a meeting with my head of business development. It was one of his first ones, and we had worked with the company too. We were like this is when we were expanding to Boston, and we had worked with the company. We were giving them millions of dollars, and we sat in his office where he was screaming at us. He's like, "No one will ever buy parking on a telephone." I'm like, but they do, and they buy your parking, right? So yeah, it's kind of interesting. But
So ParkWiz essentially has educated your sort of future marketplaces.
We've both helped each other in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are some of your biggest challenges today, as you guys have kind of blossomed into this now 111 employee company? What are some of your biggest challenges?
I'd say I spend a lot of time thinking about how do we scale the company while keeping the same culture, vibe, people, because I knew what it was at Bank of America, and so I've got a playbook of like, all right, do the opposite of this, right? And so I think a lot about like the biggest challenge is like how do you execute to really ambitious plan, but also enjoy it, and that's what I spend a lot of time thinking about.
So backing up a little bit, you'd mentioned like at different stages when you went from 5 to 10 to 25 to 50, and that in and of itself presents challenges. What did you do to actually manage that? Like how did you go about maybe trying to create that, we're a company of 5 even though we've got 50? What did you do to kind of instill that? Or
from 5 to 50 or 5 to 10?
5 to 10, yeah.
Well, I mean, the first thing we started when from 5 to 10, it was something simple. It was just a weekly meeting where we went around and we talked about what we were doing, and it was like that simple. Now we have like a company all hands once a month where it's like that has changed over time, which is like it's a lot more organized. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was something as simple as that, and then also realizing what is the next layer of something that like I have to do or hire to figure out scale. And right around that time, I decided, I'm like, I've been doing all of the business development with the parking companies. I need something more. I need someone to do that because for the company to scale, I need someone focused on that full time.
Yeah.
So that was one of the decisions.
Well, thinking about at that point, like what was your key hire, I guess, that allowed you to transition from 5 to 10 and 10 to 25 and so on?
I'd say key hire. I mean, it's hard to say because like there's like key hire and key hires, right? Like I'd say like the one, like, cause we got someone, the first key hire that we made that was like someone who's done it before versus like, hey, you're good at this, or like you're good, we like you can do stuff. Was someone who had run marketing at 3 venture-backed startups, and so we hired Alon, and he was like the first, he was the first one who had done it before, and so he had been key in scaling the organization from about 15 to I mean, he's still with us today.
Yeah.
And then 2 hires that also came on actually before Alon were Kate and Leah. They were entry-level customer service folks, and Kate now runs our business intelligence department, and Leah runs our customer service department, and both of them have been able to scale. So we got lucky with them. It's very rare when you can have someone that can keep up with the pace of change in a company, let alone two people. Because I've had to hire and level up in pretty much every part of the organization except those two. So it's like I'd say we got lucky with two entry-level folks that were able to scale, and then Alon was someone who was in the bucket of had done it before.
One thing you mentioned before early on is that as far as raising money goes, didn't even know this kind of world existed, VCs and such. But soon enough, 2 or 3 years in, did it become a reality? Like at what point did you realize if we're truly going to scale, how do we need to go out and like raise money to do that?
Well, we were sitting in Sam Yegan's office, which I think he still has an office here.
I think
the same
so.
one.
Yeah, like
it's been there for years. But we're sitting in there, Jeremy and I, and we were talking about like the scaling and where the company needs to go, and it just kept coming up. Well, we could do that, but let's wait like 6 months because we were cash flow positive, profitable, bootstrap. We're like, well, that's going to cost $15K. We have this money allocated for this, and it was funny because Sam was like, I think you guys need to raise some money, and we're like, well, how does that work? And so it was funny because I remember him saying, well, how much are you raising? We're like, well, we don't know. He's like, well, you should say you're raising 200 to 400K. Because if you raise 200, you hit your goal. But if you say you're raising 400, you only hit 200, then there's going to be a signaling problem.
Right.
And if you say you're raising 200, you raise 400, they're going to think that you're just being overly opportunistic and greedy. So we ended up raising 510, which is funny. But so that was kind of like the first impetus for it's money actually was truly a bottleneck for us.
Yeah.
We were a profitable company, and it was like relieving like a pressure valve to help us scale.
And what was the next juncture after that? So that's relatively early on, and I know you've had a big raise relatively recently.
Mm-hmm.
Was there something in between the two?
So yes, that was like our convertible debt round.
Yeah.
And then we raised 2 million seed, and the total was 2.5 if you include the convertible debt. Our Series A was 4.5 million, and then we closed 20. Our Series B last August.
So tell us about that kind of progression and how it made you feel. So, starting with that 510 and then going to the next level, seed round, and then Series A and then Series B. Are there, and for all of us here, is it a different experience each time?
Yeah, I mean, like the convertible debt was like pretty easy. It was closed very quickly because we were profitable. We were growing extremely quickly. Excuse me. We also had like the stage of Techstars, right?
Yeah.
And so we were literally able to get through because it was funny. Like you see all these people try to negotiate terms, and it's like, oh, well, the terms are set. We're closing in 9 days, and because like we had like millions of dollars that wanted into the 200 to 400K. And so it was nice because like we knew we'd close it, so there wasn't any like back and forth, and so that was like, I don't think that was like typical. We were the hot company at Techstars, and that helped propel us into our seed round where like everybody wanted in, and we had a lot of support, and that was pretty quickly. Whereas when we went to do our A, we were not hot at all, and it was very hard, and it took like 7 months, very uncomfortable conversations. Nobody really wanted to really be in. That was a difficult raise. Like the Series A was like really tough because like the convertible debt and seed, like you're selling this like vision and this inspirational future, and we already had a lot of traction. And then for Series A, the bar gets higher, right?
Sure.
And so our traction wasn't as great. Like it was great in the seed, and then it wasn't great considering what we did with the money, not just for ourselves, but if you look at like what other companies have grown over that time, right? Because like VCs have a choice. It's just not you comparing yourself against you, but well, how are you compared to other investments that they can make and the return they can get? So that was really hard. We didn't have the momentum. We also didn't know how to, like, I didn't keep in touch with any of the investors, so it was like, hey, we need money, and they were like, hey, well, you haven't updated us, like. Where the hell have you guys been? Oh, and like these cohorts suck, and your deck is uninspiring, and hello. And
Yeah.
yeah, and so that was really, really hard. And it's kind of funny because Chicago Ventures ended up leading our Series A. And they were the only ones that passed on us in the seed.
Oh my God, that's
So it's kind of funny. And then when everybody, in terms of stepping up, we have a lot of investors. Chicago's really stepped up. Coastal investors have stepped up. But when truly stepping up, is leading.
Yeah.
And obviously there's a million reasons why someone wouldn't lead. And that doesn't mean that you're not. That doesn't mean that you're a bad VC at all.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people wanted to step up to lead in our seed, and then there was only one that was there in our A. But the one that didn't want to, that passed. So it's just kind of like a funny,
Is there, I mean, you hear this expression thrown around about sort of money versus smart money.
Mm-hmm.
In your experience, is there any validity to that?
Oh yeah, there's tons of money out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen dumb money just destroy companies and destroy people. If you surround yourself with great people, that's what makes.
What I mean, what were some of the tangible benefits of having, quote unquote, smart money?
I mean, there's a reason that it's smart money. They're smart, right? I mean, the reason people are in positions where they are, is because they made decisions to get there. Each decision you make changes the fork in life. Right?
Yeah.
And so, if you make a series of better and better decisions, then you get there. And over time, it's just a testament to there's a reason that they're there. Obviously, there's mistakes, and the market corrects itself, right?
Yeah.
People are in places that they shouldn't or don't deserve, but ultimately, better decisions make for better places. And so, I don't know. I've seen the variance of VCs, money, getting smart money, folks who've experienced it before, that have been through a lot of the pains, that understand certain things, that can help. I mean, open doors.
Did you mention that? Did you go coast to coast for your Series A, not just Chicago? From your experience, I mean, is there a difference?
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
I mean, there's a lot more money in Silicon Valley. I mean, it's just there's,
Yeah.
You can literally go door to door. It's kind of funny because they always ask well, who are you seeing? And it's there's 1,000 VCs in Sand Hill Road, and it's going door to door, hat in hand, and I mean, it's just a totally different, ball game. I mean, there's a lot more funds now than when we went out to raise 4 or 5 years ago. But even the ones that were larger in Chicago, there's maybe 5 or 6, right?
Yeah.
Whereas there's 1,000.
Yeah.
Right? So there's just so much. There's just so many more. I guess cracks at the bat, right?
Yeah. And East Coast too, or just?
Yeah, East Coast as well. Yeah. So same thing. New York, has a ton. VCs. I mean, there's VCs all over the country, right? I mean, there's tons there's some large ones in the Midwest as well. I mean, they're all over, right?
Yeah. I mean, did that come into play at all, proximity, having an investor here versus the West Coast?
Well, we have the best of both worlds because we have Chicago investors, right? We have Pritzker VC, OCA, Light Bank, and Chicago Ventures here.
Yeah.
And then we've got, West Coast, we have Bullpen, 500 Startups, E-Ventures, and Battery Ventures.
Yeah.
And then Insight Venture Partners on the East Coast in New York City.
Wow.
So we have a really nice mix of different stage and geographies.
Has that helped you with your expansion? Having that kind of...
Oh yeah, we could literally open any door. I mean, and we pretty much met them all through the accelerator and the program.
Wow. So it does all kind of go back to that, at least from a mentoring perspective and investor perspective, back to your experience at Accelerate Labs.
Yeah, Joe Yarman was from Tim Draper's personal fund, was a mentor, and they were in our seed deal and actually they've been in every stage, even the last so they put in money in the convertible debt, right? Mike Gamson is on my board. He was an investor in the convertible debt, right? So actually, Gamson, Yagan, and Gurin, three of my current board members were investors and mentors at Accelerate.
Wow,
The first,
that's awesome. That's very cool.
Debt round, yeah.
So where are you guys going from here? What's the mission? What's the vision? What's the plan?
So we make life easier for drivers, so you can focus on the things that matter most. And so the goal is, like, the vision is, making transportation easier. So, if you were coming here, you focus on, do I want to have a Coca-Cola or, a beer, and
Right.
not where am I going to park?
Yeah.
And so you can focus on life. We also, from like a company perspective, look at it like we want SpotHero to be an engine of growth, not just for our investors and for our customers and parking partners, but for all the employees. So the goal is that your time at SpotHero allows you to change the trajectory of your career, and everybody's on a trajectory, but hopefully the time that's spent at SpotHero, you actually move faster than you otherwise would have, and we spend a lot of time thinking about that.